Hi, my name is Shri Ausare. I serve on the National Debate Coaches Association Executive Board as the Curriculum Director. I'm also a high school teacher at the NSU University School in Davie, Florida. Today, I have the privilege of moderating a round between four excellent debaters on the 2024-2025 policy debate resolution. Resolve the United States federal government should significantly strengthen its protection of domestic intellectual property rights in copyrights, patents, and/or trademarks. This demonstration is geared towards beginners and will feature evidence from the NDCA Novice Packet. The affirmative from Northwestern will endorse a federal policy to create licensing requirements for the use of copyrighted materials for training and output of commercial generative artificial intelligence. And the negative from Emory will point out the flaws of that policy. Each competitor will be using high school debate speech times, so 8-minute constructives, 5-minute rebuttals, and 3 minutes across X. When listening to each speech, try your best to flow the debate or take notes of the arguments each team made in the order presented. When you're finished with the video, we advise that you take some time to decide who won the debate and write up your reasoning for the speech, for the decision. Before we begin the debate, I'd like to give each participant a chance to introduce themselves. So let's start with the affirmative.
I'm Veronica. I went to Mamaroneck High School in Mamaroneck, New York, and I currently debate for Northwestern in Evanston, Illinois. Um, I'm the 1A, and a reason that I love debate is because it allows me to learn about a vast selection of different kinds of topics and information that I wouldn't otherwise know about, and allows me to research those things in depth, which is valuable to me.
My name's Akash. I went to North Broward Prep in Florida. Currently, I go to Northwestern. I major in computer science. And one reason that I really love debate is because of the research, of course. You get to learn about a vast array of subject matter, as Veronica mentioned, but also because of the people that you meet. I've met some truly wonderful people throughout debate, and I hope that you all watching this debate get to experience something like that as well. Um, Emery, feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Grace. I'll be the 1N in this debate, and I went to Washburn Rural High School in Topeka, Kansas, and I just graduated from Emory University, where I majored in political science and history. And I really appreciate the community that debate has surrounded me with, but also I like the competitive aspect of it and traveling to tournaments as well.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm from South Florida, Coral Glades, the 954. I went to Emory as an African American Studies major. A reason I love debate is, like Akash said, the people that you meet there are all super nice and caring, and the overall value the community places on thinking differently and critical about issues that I probably normally would never know about. And I'll be the 2N for the debate.
Awesome. Let's get started.
Okay, is everyone good? Awesome. The United States federal government should create licensing requirements for the use of copyrighted material for training and output of commercial generative artificial intelligence. Advantage 1 is journalism. Journalism is declining because of a perfect storm created by the unlicensed use of copyrighted material by Gen AI companies. That undermines the lifeblood of U.S. democracy. Blumenthal 24. Reporting by newspapers and broadcast stations are an existential crisis. Artificial intelligence is eating away at the lifeblood of our democracy. Local papers are closing at a staggering rate. The rise of big tech has been directly responsible for the decline in local news. Meta, Google, and OpenAI are using the hard work of newspapers and authors to train AI models without compensation. Those models compete with newspapers, cannibalizing readership and revenue. And unlicensed use of copyrighted content enables mass misinformation campaigns and undermines trust in all news content. Lynch 24. Gen AI tools have been built with stolen goods. Gen AI companies copy content without permission to compete. Gen AI tech enables misinformation on an unprecedented scale. Gen AI can generate outputs customized for individuals, making misinformation in all forms look real. Gen AI tools hallucinate and generate misstatements that are attributed to real publications. Americans can't spend their time determining what's true and false. They stop trusting any source of information. There is a path forward, licensed and compensated use of publisher content. This will ensure a sustainable and competitive ecosystem. Without licensed use, the ecosystem will collapse, and Gen AI powered search will have nothing to search for beyond poor quality content and misinformation. Congress should eliminate any doubt that licenses are required. And without licensing, AI erodes trust in information, causes newspaper closure, and leads to mass job loss of journalists that kills democracy. Coffrey and Smith 23. Without a requirement for AI developers to seek permission for uses of protected content, AI can lead to the undermining of democracy through closure of newspapers, magazines, and digital outlets, the spread of disinformation, and reduced access to reporting. An engaged citizenry depends on reliable reporting by outlets and public trust. Unlike Gen AI systems, publishers accept responsibility for content in a world flooded by synthetic information. Real information becomes harder to identify and trust. The negative effects of unsustainable AI development practices on publishers can lead to job losses and a devaluing of journalistic content. And AI-driven erosion of trust in democracy in the U.S. causes a global rise in autocracy and war. At Checkmate 23. Democracies must strengthen their home front to succeed in competition with Russia and China. Democracies are experiencing polarization, undermining democratic governance and trust. Autocracies will continue undermining the liberal world order. To uphold democracy, the U.S. must lead an effort to regenerate democracy's public spheres. Media is playing a central role. AI makes the situation more pressing. Unregulated AI work as a Trojan horse of autocracy. It could dramatically erode social trust. Distrust resulted in threat to democracy, a downward political spiral, pulling societies towards enmity. This leads to violence, war, and autocracy, which could sink democracy worldwide. Democratic backsliding result in World War II. Similar forces working in the 2020s. And global democracy collapse causes extinction. Belfield 23. A world dominated by totalitarian states would be more war-prone than democratic states. It would increase the risk of collapse and extinction. A world dominated by democracy says fewer wars. Miscalc might be a problem for totalitarian states due to personalization and disincentives for accurate info. War makes extinction more likely by WND being used. Totalitarian states are less cooperative. Internal norms are characterized by paranoia. This is bad for risks that require cooperation, such as pandemics or climate change. Scientific progress could help address natural risks and climate change. However, totalitarian states would likely inhibit progress. A totalitarian world would lock in, resulting in a trajectory with no scientific and social progress, which threaten the destruction of humanity. And licensing is the only way to save journalism from AI. Raj 24. Requiring tech companies to license content would ensure news publishers would be able to negotiate. Journalism can be an important source of data for models. Publications need to demand a framework that will benefit journalism in the public interest. The only way journalism will survive AI is to double down on its journalists. And licensing is feasible on a large scale. Cooper Smith 23. It is feasible to get consent on a mass scale. It happens frequently. Examples include licensing for music and CCC. Mass copyright infringement should not be rewarded. The idea that just because it may be harder to get consent is that it is therefore not infringement would incentivize infringers to illegally copy more. That cannot possibly be the law. Getting a license, even when a large volume of works is being used, is not difficult. There are models available with many different copyright management organizations. Advantage 2 is model collapse. Status quo AI development is unsustainable. Uncompensated use of human creations causes future AI to be trained on AI-generated works, which causes model collapse and widespread AI hallucination. Pasquale and Sun 24. A policy of free appropriation of copyrighted work may menace AI development. It is not sustainable to expect training data to persist as it is being mined without compensation to create substitutes. LLMs learning from data produced by other models is more likely that less humans are compensated. The researchers call this model collapse. Their results can be skewed by hallucination and fabrication by LLMs. If uncompensated and uncontrolled expropriation of copyrighted works continues, creators may be likely to be defunded. AI is dependent on ongoing input of human-generated works to remain relevant. And licensing solves. It prevents model collapse and hallucinations by creating a thriving market for original human content. Coffrey and Smith 23. Gen AI development is unlikely to succeed without licensed material. The failure of license may negatively impact the valuation of AI companies, creating a cloud on the tech because it is unlicensed. Human content is needed. Use of model-generated content and training causes model collapse. Gen AI could become an unattractive swamp of hallucinations. And model collapse causes large-scale data poisoning. Human-generated content is key to solve. Grad 23. LLMs are generating pollution that undermines such models. Learning from data produced by models causes model collapse, whereby models forget the true underlying data distribution. Model collapse is a threat similar to data poisoning. With large-scale web crawls, even a small amount of malicious data can lead to widespread contamination. What is different is the scale at which such poisoning can happen once it is automated. Errors cause synthetic data to be low quality. Researchers urge that the steps taken to preserve original content for future training purposes. And specifically, model collapse makes intentional data poisoning more effective. Shmalov et al. 23. Poisoning attacks degrade the model's performance. Malicious data can be inserted. With the emergence of LLMs, more recent models are trained with large-scale web crawls, making data poisoning attacks more feasible on these untrustworthy web sources. Model collapse affects generations of learned generative models, which generated data can end up polluting the training set of the next generation of models. And AI hallucinations cause inadvertent escalation and flash wars. Clear 23. Consider the risk of errors and miscalculations. Algorithms are capable of hallucinations. It is not hard to imagine computers hallucinating on an imminent enemy attack and launching a war that might otherwise have been avoided. Future wars are likely to be fought by one AI against another, both linked to nuclear weaponry. A future war between the US, Russia, or China. The unchecked use of such systems potentially risks unintended conflict escalation and crisis instability because of challenging and untested complexities of interaction between AI-enabled and autonomous weapon systems on the battlefield.
Okay, I want to start on the journalism advantage. So the news media aspect of it, why is AI the largest issue that makes people not trust journalism or newspapers?
Right, because AI models replicate local news and journalism, and that makes Americans less or it replicates it using misinformation or disinformation and can get it wrong, which causes Americans to think that it's a result of those outlets in the first place and not a result of generative AI, which makes it more difficult for Americans to determine what is true and false between actual journalistic sources and what's generated by AI.
Okay, I want to ask about the sort of Blumenthal evidence. It says internally that sort of local newspapers are dying. Why is the use of AI the largest reason why local newspapers are dying rather than larger sort of nationwide newspapers that are more expansive and
Yeah.
more, I guess, prepared?
Yeah, so tech companies are using newspapers to train AI models without compensation, and then those models compete with newspapers, which get rid of revenue from the journalistic institutions that created the content in the first place, which means that local news can generate news about local events.
Okay. And I guess I want to ask more broadly about the licensing aspect of the plan. How post-plan do courts determine whose content is owned and how that content is owned in terms of like litigating when AI is using someone's works? Like how do you determine who owns those works?
We think normal means is that AI would just be forced to obtain licensing before using human-generated content in commercial.
But an aspect of that licensing is tied to knowing who owns a work. So how do courts determine that with so much content online that isn't necessarily directly tied to someone?
We would argue that the internal link that's important for the AF is work that is like that is attributed to humans, i.e., like human content being ripped off in journalism. That is both local and national, and the content that is attributed and is getting stolen is what's important to resolving the internal link to like broader democracy collapse.
Okay, I want to ask about the modeling advantage. Why isn't the sort of initial data that AI is already using to build like language learning models and other generative aspects of AI, why isn't that enough to prevent model collapse?
Because over time, as different generations of AI build off earlier generations, it's impossible for later generations of AI to determine what of their earlier work that they're basing their model off of is human content and is generated by earlier LLMs. Because earlier LLMs can make mistakes when interpreting the human content, it means that later LLMs create models off of models that are already created by AI, which means that the degree to which AI is actually using human content is less, which means that it's less effective.
Okay, that makes sense. 10 seconds. I don't think I can do anything with that.
Okay, the 1 and C's sent. Is everybody good for an order? Okay, it's 3 off, and then the journalism advantage, and then the model collapse advantage. Okay. Is anyone not ready? Okay, great. First off is the AI industry disad. AI innovation is developing rapidly now. Mars 24. AI has become big business. Innovation is picking up. Deutsche Bank anticipates a dramatic spike in companies adopting AI. The global AI market is on track to reach 1.3 trillion. Patents are being filed in many different sectors. AI adoption is climbing at a breakneck rate. As computational power grows exponentially, the capabilities of AI will skyrocket. And the plan decks AI innovation. It increases cost, complexity, and barriers to entry. Pro and Azuri 23. Introducing a licensing requirement for Gen AI would have profound implications. Given the vast number of works an AI training dataset might use, obtaining licenses becomes a significant challenge, could act as a barrier to entry. Identifying, negotiating, and securing licenses would be resource intensive. These increased costs could deter companies from pursuing AI altogether. Complexity and cost with obtaining licenses might discourage innovation. Companies opt for safer, less ambitious projects to avoid copyright pitfalls, limiting advancement of AI technologies. Only large entities have resources could lead to a monopolistic environment, reducing innovation. Ripple effects extend beyond AI. And AI solves extinction. It's a better decision maker than humans. Surf and Waits 23. In terms of whether machines or humans are more likely to initiate extinction, humans have the upper hand. Humans showed an alarming tendency to err on the side of initiating catastrophic attacks. These would pose much graver risks to humanity, the machine-driven ones. Exploration shown AI's superiority to human decisions. Algorithmic bias can be readily deprogrammed. Biased algorithms are easier to fix than biased people. AI is often the last bastion of defense against hacks, identifying complex human coding mistakes early on and correcting them. Even when tech contributes to unwanted outcomes, humans are the ones pressing the buttons. The benchmark is often, is AI perfect in handling this task rather than is it better than humans? The answer is yes. AI can mitigate risk to humanity. Next off is the court clog dissad. The courts are managing increased caseloads now. Slower filings and technology are decreasing overload. Reuters 24. Judges at all levels are managing. Challenges have receded, making room for positive outcomes, while increasing caseloads continue to be the biggest change. The portion of our survey saying that has decreased, staffing shortages down from the past 12 months when almost 2/3 reported staffing shortages. Courts are enjoying broader engagement with technology solutions. And the plan clogs the courts with a treadmill of litigation. Metegna 24. GAI models are complex. Add complexities of copyright law, considering how contextual and fact-intensive it is, how expensive and long the process can be, and the atomized nature of individual authors, copyright litigation might not be optimal. What would await is a litigation treadmill. A myriad of artists would have to litigate against multiple GAI developers. Imagine having to identify your work in each model and sue each company only to discover new models using your works. A case could inspire developers to circumvent the verdict, forcing artists to start litigation all over again. And court clog prevents hurdles to the success of litigation that's necessary to solve climate change. Banda and Fulton 17. Judges are adapting to climate change. They have increasingly held governments accountable. Courts' climate litigation will continue facing procedural hurdles. They are rising to the task. Emerging science appears likely to feed additional litigation. The number of climate lawsuits is on the rise, positioning courts for a vital role in climate-related accountability, resiliency, and a sustainable future. And warming causes extinction. Ning 19. Climate change causes extinction is possible due to nonlinearity, cascading feedbacks, multiplicative thresholds, and tipping points. Ice caps cause sea level rise, melting increases warming, and carbon. Release of methane produces runaway warming. The threat of sea level rising from warming is well known, but there are likely and imminent threats to the survivability of mankind. Adaptability limit making extinction likely. Next off is the opt-out counterplan. The United States federal government should implement streamlined notice and action procedures requiring AI developers to promptly and in good faith take action to prevent copyright infringing content from being generated by its system again. The counterplan creates an opt-out process that protects creators from having their works used to create identical or substantially similar works by AI. That solves Pasquale and Son 24. A new opt-out mechanism would empower to reclaim proprietary control of works through notice and action procedures. This would allow authors to submit requests for removal of works from AI. A copyright owner would be entitled to send a notice to an AI provider that output contains a similar copy. Upon receiving the notice, it must promptly take actions to prevent infringing. Actions may include removing the author's work from the dataset, embedding filtering technology into the AI system, and machine unlearning. Next, the journalism advantage. 1. Licensing is impossible for Gen AI training data. The scale is too large, down 23. Effort to implement licensing would need to grapple with insurmountable problems. Scale. AI developers train their models by pulling content from the internet. Because virtually all of this content is eligible for copyright, any scheme would need to include the entire internet. Licensing would require royalties for billions of works, many with no ownership info. Scope of statutory license would be orders of magnitude larger than any ever. Acquiring data to identify the copyright owner would be impossible. 2. The AF can't solve journalism decline because of tech company consolidation. Parent 23. News consumers are not going to journalism outlets. More than half of Americans report getting news from social media. As a result of this consolidation, most publishers are dependent on Facebook and Google for distribution and ad financing. A publisher provides itself standing alone against two tech giants. A news provider does not have meaningful outside options. If a single news organization were to refuse list links on Facebook or Google, neither platform's revenue would be impacted. This is a difference of bargaining power. Facebook and Google benefit greatly from journalism content that populates platforms. This disparity in bargaining power allows the tech firms to force new organizations to accept unfair and exploitive terms with limited compensation, knowing they have no alternatives. 3. Or journalism is resilient. Edge 24. Journalism is not dying. Layoffs don't mean that news media is dying. They're adapting and able to pivot and survive. Print will survive. Newspapers have not fallen into private equity, are making a successful transition. Radio didn't kill off newspapers. Television didn't either. Will the internet prove the meteor that finally kills off the dinosaurs? It hasn't yet, and it's been 30 years. 4, other countries are an alt cause. Their impact is global, but their solvency is only about the US. 5, democracy doesn't prevent war. Dornsfleet 19. A reverse wave away from democracy has not happened. A general trend downwards cannot yet be detected. No consensus is quantitative literature on whether democracy has beneficial general outcomes. The overall evidence is weak. There are other more powerful explanations for war. The theoretical foundations of democratic peace hypothesis is weak. The causal mechanism is unclear. There's no direct impact of democracy. There's too much variation. The instrumental value of democracy is simply non-existent. Next, the model collapse advantage. 1, no model collapse. The original training set will anchor new models, even if they're trained with synthetic data. Cobburn 24. AI model collapse is not inevitable. The problem of training AI on AI-made data isn't significant given the way the model training is actually done. Previous studies warned about a doomsday scenario, relied on the assumption that each succeeding generation of AI would train exclusively on the synthetic data. Legacy data won't just be discarded. Instead of being replaced, it's more likely to accumulate. The resulting model will continue to perform. If data accumulates and models train on a mixture of real and synthetic data, model collapse no longer occurs. The curse of recursion may not be dire. And 2, the plan causes worse AI models. Tanga 24. Licenses incentivize data substitution. If the most adequate data require paying a licensing fee, it would incentivize developers to cut costs and substitute quality data for other sources. Inferior data could result in garbage in, garbage out. Strong copyright provisions could incentivize data substitutions as a way to avoid paying for licensed data sets. This would translate directly to subpar performance for AI models, which would likely be more biased. And 3, data poisoning doesn't cause war. AI weeds out misinformation. Cox and Williams 21. AI can enhance the ability to discriminate between real and false info, which prevents miscalc in a crisis. Close calls have occurred in which nuclear weapon use was only avoided through uncertain info. AI could significantly improve competence. AI could play a significant role in reducing potential operator biases. These systems prevent future close calls or misinterpretations of data. I'm open for cross-ex.
Okay. The AI industry said, what risks to humanity does AI innovation solve?
The Surf and Waits evidence describes the risk of nuclear war and cyber attacks are 2 of the areas where AI is better equipped to deal with challenges than humans.
The Surf and Waits evidence is about AI decision-making, but your internal link is about AI innovation. What is the link between those 2 things?
Yeah, our evidence establishes that as AI is innovated, it's integrated into more decision-making. So there's a link between innovation and integration that our evidence says will happen as long as the pace of development continues.
Okay, the court clog dissad, what cases now would solve climate change? Your evidence is from 2017. If the courts were en route to solving it, why haven't they in the past 7 years?
So we do think that the courts are making important progress, which is why it needs to be maintained given the pace of climate change and how it's continuing to accelerate. Courts are able to, our evidence says, hold governments accountable by enforcing like clean climate measures. It doesn't name specific cases, you're right, but it makes a more broad claim.
Right. The court just overruled Chevron, which will create like a flood of climate litigation and other kinds of litigation where companies have an incentive to challenge any decision that a federal agency has ever made. Why is the F key to the internal link?
So I think that that's a neg argument that the courts are going to be litigating more climate cases, which is why any sort of link that the plan could cause or any sort of extra litigation the plan results in would be incredibly detrimental because, to your point, the court will be focused on climate change.
Okay, and then your argument there is that the most conservative Supreme Court in the last century is going to solve climate change. Why would they be incentivized to do so?
No, our argument's not necessarily about the Supreme Court, but like lower district and federal courts, which are not necessarily all like driven by ideology or as conservatively leaning. It's not about the Supreme Court as much as the lower courts that are not necessarily like biased per se.
Okay, the opt-out counterplan, does the counterplan say that training AI on copyrighted use isn't fair use?
So I guess in terms of whether it doesn't result in any sort of changes to copyright law, but it makes it such that AI developers, if the copyright owners identify that they're using their data, then they have to take action to prevent that. I don't think it necessarily changes any of the fair use standards, but it just goes by like a different mechanism to address,
Okay.
the internal link.
In that case, what incentives do AI companies have to operate in good faith?
Well, because there's this sort of enforcement mechanism of the counterplan that there will be like these different procedures that are implemented if they do not take action to prevent infringing content.
Is everybody ready for an order? Awesome. The order is going to be advantage 1, advantage 2, the opt-out counterplan, the court clog DA, then the AI industry DA. Does anybody need that again? Okay, awesome. They say licensing fails. 1, all parties say yes. AI providers want access to high-quality, human-generated data, and copyright owners want to make money. 2, CMOs, or collective management organizations, do work. CMOs in music, art, and literary works have been successful in the past. Shutterstock and Getty prove licensing is possible at scale. 3, holdouts can license with AI companies on their own, or AI providers can exclude them from training. They say tech company consolidation causes journalism decline. No, AI is key. AI shuts human journalism out of the market at a level never seen before, and misinformation and deepfakes as a result of AI cause distrust in all news. Tech company bargaining power does not compare to AI providers unfairly using the entire internet to train their models. They say journalism is resilient. This card is not about AI. Just because newspapers evolved after radio does not mean that human journalism can compete with infinite AI-generated content. Other countries are not an alt cause. If the United States strengthens journalism at home, it can lead an effort to revitalize democracy abroad. Our 1EC Echenique evidence explicitly says the United States must strengthen the home front and, quote, media is central. They say democracy does not solve war. They've conceded democracy solves global cooperation to solve existential climate change, pandemics, and AI lock-in. Democracies do not go to war. Personalist dictators are not held accountable. They don't care about making good decisions, so they miscalculate and they're more likely to launch a nuke. That's our 1AC Battlefield evidence. Advantage 2. Yes, model collapse. Human-generated content is run off the internet. If only AI-generated content is available to train models, AI will make much worse decisions. Their Claiborne card is neg. It assumes we can accumulate more human content, but that won't happen. The plan does not cause worse AI models. Bad AI models get run out of the market if they're inaccurate now, but that does not take out our model collapse argument. In the long term, all AI models will grow worse when they only have AI-generated data to work off. Unlicensed scraping causes model collapse, and the plan solves. Miller 23. Since AI companies are scraping the internet without copyright, they train models on data which contain an increasing amount of AI-generated material. This leads to complete model failure, a circumstance which could hamper AI companies. Model collapse is likely. Yes, data poisoning impact. Lethal autonomous weapons, including AI-powered nukes, are prone to error. That causes escalation and flash wars. Their Cox evidence assumes that AI is perfect. Model collapse means it is not. The opt-out counterplan. 1, permutation do both. We can allow people to opt out of AI training and require AI companies to get licenses. 2, does not solve fair use. The counterplan does not change copyright law or fair use at all, which is confirmed in 1NC Crossx. No AI provider would care about a copyright holder's complaint because they'd say that they're using the work fairly. 3, it does not solve the AI advantage. If companies opt out, then there's no data to train AI. That leads to model collapse and data poisoning impacted on the case. 4, opt-out fails. Lack of tech. AAP 23. Opt-out turns copyright on its head. As Gen AI developers have sourced copyrighted materials from piracy sites, relying on tools to prevent scraping would be ineffective. Publishers do not have tools that enable an opt-out. There is no tech that can detect when AI disregards opt-out instructions. Adequate tools for an opt-out would not be timely, would not be accessible, would not be implemented, or would impair access. The inability to develop standard technical measures in the 25 years after DMCA serves as a cautionary tale. 5. It would be impossible to detect copyright infringement. Coffey and Smith 23. Publishers are concerned opt-out must be efficient. In an opt-out regime, developers have incentives to make opt-out difficult for publishers. With opt-in, developers are incentivized to seek efficient licensing. DAL-E's opt-out system requires the owner to submit a copy of each image, along with the description. This is impractical. An opt-out regime puts the burden on copyright owners. Not only does this incentivize non-disclosure, but developers strain systems from notorious markets for piracy, necessitating copyright owners enforce rights against infringers as a prerequisite, a burden impossible to achieve. 6. Permutation to the counterpoint. 7. Links to the AI DA. It still allows people to prevent their work from being used to train AI. 8. Links to the court clog DA. Every complaint would go to court. All AI providers would say they're covered by the fair use exception. 9. Conditionality is a voting issue. It skews strategy, disincentivizes quality research, that hurts fairness and education. The court clog DA. 1. Non-unique. There's a tsunami of lawsuits about regulations now. Katz 24. The court overturned Chevron. Fallout is likely to be widespread. The tsunami of lawsuits against agencies that the court authorized has the potential to devastate the functioning of the federal government. The decisions could open the floodgates of new litigation. It is open season. 2. Courts can handle AI copyright cases. 1NC Reuters says staffing shortages are down, and courts are engaging tech solutions. 3. Non-unique and term. Copyright suits will flood the courts now, but the plan provides legal clarity. Coffey and Smith 23. The office should clarify use of publishers' content for commercial generative AI training is disfavored as fair use. Such clarification would reduce uncertainty that may arise as multiple lawsuits progress through courts. It would help avoid the need for litigation by incentivizing GAI companies to reach fair and negotiated agreements. The constellation of litigation matters that has and will continue to emerge may benefit from broad guidance. 4. Courts don't solve climate change. Goho et al. 24. The court issued decisions expressing hostility to regulatory agencies. This accelerates recent trends in the court. These destabilize environmental regulation by making it likely judges overturn agency actions and demonstrate striking distrust of environmental regulation and agency expertise. 5. Other countries are an alt cost. Their internal link is about global climate law, but their DA is about court clog in the United States. 7. No impact. Climate change will not cause extinction. We can adapt to the worst excesses of climate change, and the media has historically dramatized its negative impacts based in science. The copyright DA, or the AI industry DA. 1. Case turns the DA. Model collapse hurts the AI industry. Myers 24. Telling our own stories is good for AI that use our data. AI as it exists, if it causes us to become too predictable, then AI's future value will decrease rapidly. What future value will there be if OpenAI's tech fails to generate anything new in the future and its outputs are predictable repeats? Model collapse highlights the importance of developing guidelines for responsible machine learning. 2. No link. AI has deep pockets and other countries will also regulate. Coffey and Smith 23. Copyright law does not accommodate a structure where AI gets benefits without licensing. No industry works like this. The risk appears to be if companies bet wrong on fair use, it would disrupt private capital. These deep-pocketed actors can withstand any disruption. There is no reason to believe copyrights lead to a competitive disadvantage vis-a-vis other countries. These laws are untested in the AI context, and the EU are considering transparency measures. 3. The plan increases AI value and sustainability. AAP 23. Licensing would have a positive impact on Gen AI. High-quality new publications and flourishing publishing is best to increase the value of Gen AI. Systems trained on authorized sources are more likely to yield reliable outputs. It is essential to trustworthy and reliable AI.
Okay, are you good for cross-ex?
Yeah.
Okay, first I want to ask about your arguments in response to the link on the AI industry DA. The no-link evidence that you read seems to suggest that some bigger, wealthier companies will be able to handle the plan's change. But our evidence says that it's bad when it's just big companies in the market because that reduces innovation and competition. So how is this evidence responsive to our link argument?
Excuse me. So there are two pieces here. First, all of the AI companies that are innovating right now, like OpenAI, Microsoft, these FANG companies, do have deep pockets, and they're the ones that are propelling innovation in the agenda right now. The second thing is copyrights will affect people less, especially if they are smaller, because the licensing requirements will be less steep because they're going to have to access fewer copyrights. More importantly, collective management organizations mean that smaller companies will be able to pay less to acquire licensing rights.
Okay. Okay, another question about the no link in link turn evidence that you read. The first is from the president of the News Media Alliance, and the second is from the Association of American Publishers, both of which I think are lobbying groups who want the plan. So why should we, trust what they have to say when they're representing clients who have a financial interest in the plan?
First thing that I'd like to point out is I believe this cuts both ways. Your 1NC evidence is also from a brief illustrating the harms of AI copyright. So they also have a vested interest in demonstrating that the plan is a bad idea. The second thing that I'd like to point out is you should evaluate these arguments on the merits. We have cited authors that have made robust arguments about the validity of AI copyright, and there's a reason that they're lobbying for this change.
Okay. The first argument that case turns the DA because model collapse hurts the AI industry. I am a little bit confused how this would implicate your first advantage, because the first advantage is about why AI in the industry is bad. And it seems like your second argument is that AI as an industry will soon collapse. So can you kind of resolve the tension potentially in those two uniqueness arguments?
So there is no tension at all. Our point is, so the first advantage is saying that AI, if it outcompetes human journalists, is a bad thing. And that if AI is done correctly, and the second advantage is saying that AI, if done correctly, can remedy a host of existential threats. There's not much tension between those two things. Our argument about model collapse is that AI will progressively get worse if there is no human journalism sphere from which it can train, because AI will outcompete human journalists and it is only going to be able to work off of AI-generated content.
Okay, my last question, well, I guess I only have a few seconds, so I'll just say, was the only theoretical reason to reject the team conditionality?
That's correct.
Great.
Okie doke. Is everyone good for an order? Just realized I'm muted. It's going to be court clog, journalism, and then modeling. I'm going to go. Warming outweighs. An overworked court freezes climate litigation key to combat exponential warming. That's Banda and NIG. That massively outweighs in scope and turns East advantage. 1, journalism. Courts are vital to climate accountability. Litigating lawsuits over environmental misinformation enables trust in news media. And warming wrecks democracy. It causes economic strain, social unrest, and resource wars. 2 is model collapse. Warming causes isolationism and shifting governmental focus. It decks international AI norms and regulations that would allow flawed AI on a global scale. The first argument is the non-unique argument. 1, court clog is declining. Modernization is preventing backlog. Judicial Shot 24. Courts modernization leveraging tech to provide improved efficiency, prioritizing streamlined case processing to reduce delays, shifts towards online proceedings underscore a push to address caseloads. And 2, court filings are down. Butler 23. Stats about federal caseloads filings fell 18%, civil filings declined 20%, criminal filings dropped by 8%. 3, stats prove caseloads are declining, prefer long-term trends. Case 22. Closer examination of data reveals reason to doubt caseloads. While caseload did increase through the 90s, it leveled off and began to decline. The number of cases filed in the federal courts in 2020 was 10% below 2000 since 2010. The median time for deciding cases has been lower. Rising efficiency has more than compensated for increases in case numbers. 4, Teresi Katz cites the recent Chevron decision. It proves the DA turns case. Governmental AI regulations are now subject to the whims of judges and AI companies that can throw funds at lawsuits. That would be exacerbated by an overwhelmed court. It zeroes case enforcement because firms would have to wait eons to understand new legal ground. They'd proceed as usual in the meantime. And that was also Grace's point in Cross. Chevron proves that climate litigation will be the focus of the courts in the time to come. 2AC2, they say uniqueness overwhelms, but 1, the plan upsets the squirrel's Goldilocks bounds. Courts can handle AI cases now, not post-plan. 2, that's especially true when broad trends prove trademark cases are declining. USSC 22. In 2021, copyright offenses decreased by 56.1% since 2017. 2AC 3 is the turn. 1, courts are not overwhelmed now. I just did that, but unclear copyright ownership guarantees extensive litigation over licensing. Hansen and Brook 23. Copyright ownership far from clear, making remuneration destined for protracted litigation. While existing licenses focus on areas where licensing has standardized, other areas do not have clarity. Issue remains unresolved without close examination of each contract. And 2, even minor infringements would trigger waves of litigation. Bro and Nazari 23. Licensing requirement have profound implications. Economic incentives for litigation, given structure of copyright, even small value infringements can lead to lawsuits due to potential for statutory damages. This could encourage opportunistic lawsuits. And 3, Tracy, Coffey, and Smith is not a defense of the plan. They advocate for legal clarity, not for the plan's licensing agreement that would be confusing, complex, and timely. It means the links outweigh the link term in specificity. The 1AC fails to even outline a solvency advocate that details its legal parameters. If we're confused now, courts will be confused later. 2AC4 is the internal link defense, but 1, courts do solve climate change, and empirics prove that they are the most effective. Carlene 21. Courts, the guardians and architects of law in the environmental context, litigation response to state failures, history of citizens turning to courts to enforce rights, climate litigation, incontrovertibly important role. And 2, Tracy Goho is wrong. Hostility to regulatory agencies is exactly why courts are the last avenue through which climate policy can flow. That makes it try or die. They've essentially said no other actors can solve the overall climate crisis. 2AC5, they say that other countries are alt causes, but 1, the USA is the primary driver of climate policy and the backbone of international law. The UN, ICJ, and other states look to US legal developments as judicial inspiration. 2, it's irrelevant. Even if it cannot effectuate other states' policies, the US is one of the largest emitters and houses companies that are some of the biggest contributors to climate change. Reining that in is sufficient. 2AC6 is the impact defense. Akash failed to read evidence here, prefer the consensus of climate scientists over individual opinions, insert without evidence. A freshman in environmental science 101 could see through it. Ice sheets are melting, coral reefs are getting bleached, etc. Climate change is real and bad. Go to journalism. 1NC1 licensing fails. The plan requires covering every work on the internet. That's billions upon billions of works that make it impossible to even get the data to know who owns it. That was done damn late. And licensing fails. We have no ability to administer the licenses, Hansen Brook 23. No party exists to administer licenses. A credible system of adequate scale and scope would require an incredible investment of resources, and there are no clear candidates. The cost of an ECL system broad enough to address AI training would dwarf the cost of any similar system we have seen to date. There are no CMOs that could adequately represent the range of right holders. Even in book publishing, the US does not have an adequate CMO. The development of new CMOs with sufficient infrastructure and wherewithal to represent their various constituencies would require years of effort to develop. And orphan works mean you cannot identify copyright holders for most works, Hansen and Brook 23. Trading data include massive numbers of orphan works. To license those works, adequate information about copyright ownership would need to exist or be readily obtainable. The registrations represent a tiny subset of all copyrighted works. For many works, no copyright information is available. And for online works, locating rights holders would be impossible. Searches in more narrow projects incurred significant costs with poor results. Experience from abroad is not encouraging. They say that all parties will say yes. That's irrelevant if it's unknown what parties should even be saying yes to agreeing to their work. CMOs, the music industry is distinct, and our evidence directly contradicts the world of the plan. Music is easily determined who owns it and has a robust legal system backing it already. The holdouts point is again irrelevant if we cannot even understand who should be coming to the party or groups to negotiate licensing agreements in the first place. 1C2, consolidation. Big tech ruins traditional journalism. Overwhelming leverage to use the platforms of Google, Facebook, etc., pushes news organizations into exploitative deals that slowly strangle the viability of its pine art, which also explains the decline of local news media. It's not because of AI generative licensing agreements, but rather the overarching power of big tech, which means that we have a stronger internal link that they cannot resolve of why journalism is on the decline. And also the point in Cross was that there's other factors for why people do not trust the news media, such as blatant disrespect or distrust of news media in political circles. 1C3 is resilience. If journalism can survive big tech, it can survive AI copyright issues. Newspapers are successfully transitioning. Even if that transition was from radio, it still proves a precedent for how they would survive in the world of right now. 1C4, other countries deck their solvency. Their impacts are broadly about the global impact of journalistic decline, yet none of their solvency is. Do not fill in those gaps for them. 1C5, democracy is not soft war. civil wars are equally likely, economic factors outweigh, democracy is terrible at controlling corruption, etc. That's all Doran's fleet. And the global cooperation point, it's not conceded. The internal link is democracy provides stability to allow for cooperation, disproven by what I just said, and also by current cooperative efforts between states like the US and China, both of which are not democracies. Go to modeling. 1NC1 will be in the 1R, but 1NC2, turn, the plan harms AI models. Licensing fees means developers will only use worse data sources. That's Mantengo. And the plan creates barriers to overall quality training data and undermines broader AI safety research. They say bad AI would be moved out. That's not reflected in the solvency advocate and it's external to the plan, i.e. legal systems and firms could shut down inaccurate AI regardless of licensing schemes, which also answers the Miller evidence. And 1C3, the no data poisoning wars. AI filters out between real and false info and improves warfighting confidence. That's Cox and Williams. They say laws and AI nukes, maybe in a sci-fi book, but not in the real world. Those things already have checks on when they would be used and when they'd be incurred, which means it's not a threat per the advantage. Good for Cross.
Okay, wonderful. I want to hammer home the notion of the link. So, in response to the argument that courts are competent and can handle caseloads, you said the status quo is Goldilocks and the plan upsets the balance. What's the best card you have for this Goldilocks idea?
Our overall evidence right now that the amount of trials or cases that courts are handling are on the decline, both in the immediate term, but also long-term trends prove as such. And also Goldilocks' comparative claim, i.e. the world is a plan, per the, I think, Hansen and Brooke evidence, is one where courts have to do strenuous litigation over the complexities of copyright law, and a made-up field of law doesn't even exist yet. I don't think the average judge could understand that. Yeah.
All right, so you've made 3 points. The first is overall trend of decline. Why have the courts been able to resolve this caseload?
Resolve the caseload right now?
Yeah, like why is the caseload declining? Like
yeah, sure. Because they're not faced with the overall pressing aspect of trying to figure out the complexities of legal generative AI. You have old boomers on the court that probably won't understand the complexities of what you're saying.
This is what I'm asking about. This is what I'm asking about. Do you have a card about this point that the reason why caseloads are declining is because of the fact that copyright cases are not extraordinarily complex? One card.
There's a couple things going on here. Our point is that the caseload would not increase right now because they don't have to deal with that. And then we have separate evidence that assumes that there's not going to be a massive legal shift to how generative AI is being litigated that says that trends are on the decline. So it's like going up, caseload post-plan. Going down, caseloads in the world of what we have right now. That's pretty good math equation. You're freezing me there, Kosh.
I mean,
you're good.
Gosh. Yeah, sorry, my Wi-Fi isn't stellar. So I just paused the cross-examination timer 1 minute 8 seconds. I hope that's not a big deal. Just gonna restart quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So let me ask a question about this math equation that you sort of pointed out. You know, cases are down now, the plan increases them. Let's ask about the former part of that math equation. Why are cases declining?
A broad range of
based
issues.
in evidence, please.
I don't think I need to isolate why cases are declining, but rather the fact that they are is the reason why the score is good. If I refer to the case 22 evidence, it says that caseload is overall increasing as it did through the 90s with comparative claim and also the Butler evidence. And I think the judicial shop also isolates modernization in terms of courts use technology to be more efficient and they streamline their case processing, et cetera, et cetera. So you're right, that would be the reason why. It's the first piece of evidence I read on the non-unique point.
So this, I've got about 15 seconds left. We'll leave cross-examination there. Thank you, Chris.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, the 1NR has been sent. If everyone's good for an order, it's the opt-out counter plan and then the AI industry disad. Does anybody need that again? Okay, great. Okay. First, on the opt-out counterplan, we aren't going for it, concede the perm, it's just a test of competition, but conditionality is good. One, logic. The only role of the negative is to disprove the 1AC. Disproving the counterplan doesn't prove the plan is good. Their contrived interpretation kills education and predictability. Two is neg flex. Only conditionality overcomes the research and prep deficit. It's too easy to be AF, side bias, vague plans, zero burden for case explanation means they can leverage 1AC internal links on any flow, and speaking first and last solves. Three, real world, policymakers must defend their arguments from the left and the right. There's no impact to contradictions, they're even if statements. Four, not a voter, 1AR must win, we made it impossible. Anything else trades off with substance. Five, strategy skew is inevitable with disads and topicality. Next is the AI disad. AI innovation outweighs. Humans are more likely to initiate nuclear conflicts and enable cyber attacks. AI decision-making is far superior and avoids extinction. That's surf and weights. The 2AC concedes that extinction is inevitable, so it's try or die for a shift to AI decision-making. It turns the case. One, journalism. Human control erodes social trust and makes autocratic rises inevitable. Trump proves. Two is model collapse. Human control causes war with Russia and China. More AI innovation solves inadvertent escalation and results in better competition for better AI capabilities. 2AC1 is model collapse hurts the AI industry. That's wrong. One, the industry is thriving now. The market's on track to reach 1.3 trillion and computational power is growing exponentially. That's Mars. Two, no model collapse. Extend 1 and C1. Their evidence overstates the problem of training AI on AI-made data. Data is more likely to accumulate rather than be replaced, and models can train on a mixture of synthetic and real data with no consequence. That's Claiborne. Three, reject AF studies. They assume AI-generated text replaces data, not that it supplements it. Grace Kessler et al. 24. Model collapse studies assume new data replace old data, where more realistic assumption is that data accumulate over time. Accumulating successive generations alongside the original data avoids model collapse. If data instead accumulate, the test error has a finite upper bound, meaning model collapse no longer occurs. Four, even if model collapse is true, it takes years to thwart the industry, and 2AC evidence is inconclusive. Five, AI development is booming. Jones 24. AI boom rapidly expanded. Number of AI coding projects increased from 800 to 1.8 million. Journal publications tripled, cutting-edge work being done in the industry. Academic work is shifting to analyzing the models. The rate of progress is pretty shocking. Six, AI innovations expanding across every industry and region, even if model collapse is true. That's off in 23. AI is revolutionizing. Reports substantiate claims regarding breadth and pace at which AI is infiltrating our society. AI fever is catching on across the entire business world and impacting every industry and region. The market size is estimated to expand by 1,900%. 2AC2 is no link. One, the plan undermines AI innovation. Licensing requirements act as a barrier to entry, increase costs, and deter companies from pursuing AI-driven projects altogether. That's bro. Two, 2AC evidence says some companies have deep pockets. That's our argument. If any companies have the resources, it's the largest ones, which stifles innovation and deters competition. That's bro. Three, the plan stops the vast majority of AI development. Lindbergh 23. Licensing requirement would stop most AI development in the US. Vast training inputs make licensing infeasible for anyone but largest entities. A large portion of system development has taken place in open source community. These developers do not have institutions supporting them, they're individuals. If open source developers need to engage in rights clearance, all AI development would abruptly become too expensive and difficult for this large and essential development population. Four, other countries don't solve. Their evidence just says the EU is considering transparency measures, but our internal link is about the innovation necessary to integrate AI into US decision-making. Other countries thumped the case. 2AC3 is the plan increases AI value and sustainability. That's wrong. One, the link is faster. Even if the plan increases AI's value in the long term, it zeroes innovation in the short term, which makes it impossible to solve existential threats that are coming now. Two, the plan is an existential threat to generative AI. Genre and 24. Whether using millions of works infringes copyrights is subject of litigation. If it does, the practicality of identifying, collecting, and cataloging all the works ingested by AI, much less paying rights holders, presenting daunting logistical challenges that, along with royalties, pose an existential threat to the emerging technologies. Trying to disclose their sources, it's not possible. Licensing all training data, impossible. Three, reject their evidence. It's from the Association of American Publishers, who have a clear self-interest in financial gain in licensing requirements. Four, the plan kills innovation and monopolizes AI, which makes it worse. Sternberg et al. 23. Licensing requirements would be inefficient. With the sheer volume of content produced each day, it would be impossible for AI to remain current, could result in anti-competitive behavior from entities with more resources, compelling users to gravitate towards AI with access to the most training materials, discourage new entrants and create a monopoly, which could be harmful to innovation and progress. Licensing could lead to inferior technologies. Five, the link alone turns the model collapse advantage because their argument is about why more data is important for AI to train on. And AI solves every existential risk in the case. Salmon et al. 21. AGI could revolutionize humanity. Benefits include curing disease, solving complex environmental issues such as food, oceanic degradation, and warming. If AGI realizes its potential and surpasses human intelligence, there's no doubt it could bring significant benefits related to capacity to respond. Market at capacity to respond.
Okay. Is everyone good for an order? It's just the journalism advantage, the model collapse advantage, the clog disad, the industry disad. Okay. I'm assuming everyone's good. Cool. The journalism advantage. 1. Licensing will not fail. All parties say yes. AI providers want access to good quality human-generated data, which is impossible in a flood of misinformation journalistic collapse. Past EMOs prove that it's possible. Shutterstock and Getty are empirical examples of success. The Warren and the Hansen and Brooke evidence is resources. Durable fiat should solve. We should be able to assume successful implementation of the plan. The same goes for the second card about orphan works, but it doesn't matter anyway because it's not about journalism. Our internal link is about AI copying news sources and misconstruing human-created data. Second is there's no alt cause. AI is a larger internal link than tech companies. They can scrape the internet at an unprecedented speed and scale. Bargaining power can only go so far. Exploitative deals are occurred by regulated AI. It forces tech companies to be transparent with their LLM production. 3. Journalism is not resilient. This is not contextual to the effect of AI, which can generate infinite content. Big tech and AI copyright are not analogous. 4th, US media is key. A technique is specific to how the US soft power is reliant on the outward perception of our media and polarization. If autocracies see we're divided, they'll exploit it. 5. Democratic cooperation decision-making is key to solving global crises like pandemics and climate change because leaders can cooperate transparently over solutions and scientific progress hedges against tail-end risks. It's not thumped. Cooperation between the U.S. and China is overwhelmed by cooperation between adversaries. A strong U.S. front ensures that they don't collaborate against U.S. interests. Democracy makes war less likely. Leaders are more likely to make personalized and irrational decisions leading to miscalculation. That's battlefield. Model collapse advantage. First, yes, model collapse. AI makes worse decisions if it only uses prior LLM decision making because it makes things up. It's impossible to accumulate good human content if journalism collapses first. Second is there's no turn. Inaccurate AI models aren't competitive, so they get run out of the market, but our argument still stands because eventually all AI models will become ineffective. Their thankful evidence is backwards. Model collapse means that AI will inevitably be corrupt, so the only way to ensure its safety is to prevent data poisoning. Third, data poisoning is existential. Private and public AI depend on each other. The government relies on private sector techniques to train their models for autonomous weapon decision making. Any error could cause miscalculation and rapid escalation. Their evidence assumes AI decision making is perfect. Model collapse proves that it isn't. The clog decide. The courts are clogged now. The courts will have overturned decades of precedent by getting rid of Chevron. That makes climate litigation more burdensome and less effective because companies have an incentive to challenge everything that EPA has ever done, and they'll succeed. That's 2AC Cats. Gut check. None of the 2NC evidence assumes Chevron, which means you should defer to our interpretation. This doesn't turn the aft. This argument is backwards. The plan clarifies regulations, which makes it impossible for companies to constantly pursue litigation in order to skirt their obligations. The courts are clogged now. There's still a backlog from COVID. Fellner and Nolan 24. Courts were more strained before COVID. Courts struggle to manage caseloads. A backlog persists. And more cases will come in the future because court overturned Chevron. Sayer 24. The court ruling could lead to more litigation. The decisions could encourage companies to challenge more agency interpretations. Overturning Chevron might embolden plaintiffs to sue. Second, does not turn case. Democracy is key to cooperate over climate solutions. That was case. And warming causing isolationism has nothing to do with model collapse. Domestic data poisoning is enough to trigger the impact. Third, there's no link to the disad. The AF has made a uniqueness claim that AI companies are pursuing extensive litigation to avoid responsibility now. Licensing would contribute to a decrease in copyright cases. 2EC Coffey and Smith says that the plan would decrease uncertainty. That is an advocate for the plan. We've read evidence that establishes why licensing is more transparent than the SQO. Broad guidance is better, especially after Chevron, which created confusion. Fourth, the courts do not solve climate change. Their 1NC evidence is from 2017, which means that if they could have, they would have. 2NC Carland says that climate litigation is important, but not that it is possible after Chevron. It doesn't assume Chevron, so it exacerbates the impact. Judges overturn decisions. I did that above. There's only a risk of the turn. Unlicensed use creates serial lawsuits. Cherkoff 23. Without licenses, AI developers would face serial lawsuits from owners requiring large outlays of money by defensive legal strategies. The AI industry does that. First, the model collapse turn. The second advantage proves that AI fails because it's poorly trained. That's Myers. Evidence that the AI innovation is high or booming isn't useful because it's the wrong type of innovation. That just entrenches model collapse. Gertrosser is wrong. AI does replace data because there's no way for later generations to determine which information is human or generated by an earlier model. Because AI produces language, but not knowledge. It doesn't have human judgment. It won't take years for model collapse to support the industry. Even one malicious user can poison information on the internet. That impact thus magnifies across different generations of AI. The disside does not turn case. It's the other way around. That was above. Second is there's no link. The plan does not undermine innovation. AI companies will survive copyright litigation. The industry consists of deep-pocketed actors who can withstand it. Those are the companies that are leading innovation now. That flows AF, not neg, because they have more of an incentive to abide by litigation if it makes AI production more effective, which we've proven it does. Why would they use resources to avoid it if it helps them in the industry? The dissad incentivizes the opposite. Companies would just infringe as much as possible to avoid litigation if the volume of cases is the reason we can't license. Copyright management companies check any residual damage on smaller companies. The answer is the Lindbergh and the Jonner and the Stenberg evidence on the link turn. Link does not turn case. Model collapse is about human content, not AI content. Other countries, including parts of the EU, are already considering regulation, and it's an unprecedented sector, so there's no reason to believe it would put AI companies at a disadvantage. That doesn't thump the case. The US is necessary to kickstart global litigation. That's Coffrey and Smith.
Okay, everyone's there. The order is going to be the AI industry DA, court clog, journalism, and then modeling. Okay. Akash, Veronica, good. Yep, okay. The DA outweighs. AI innovation is key to prevent nuclear conflicts from human decision-making. That's surf and waits. They've dropped a top-level framing issue. Human control is terminally unsustainable. It makes it try or die for bolstering AI innovation, which means a decision starts and ends on this page. They've also dropped Turns case analysis, journalism. Autocracy is endemic to human control. That also solves or means the DA solves the co-op aspect of the democracy impact. It's better at problem solving, which means key to solve food security, ocean degradation, etc. That's the Salmon and Anderson evidence read in the 1NR. And model collapse. We hijack the terminal. Human control causes war between Russia and China, but innovation solves escalation through more clear, better tuned AI technology, which improves AI's overall capabilities. The first argument, the case turn, there's a fundamental flaw here. One, they dropped that the industry is thriving now. The market is fine the square, which means the case can only hurt it. Two, there's no overall model collapse. It does not matter if AI knows the difference between human and real generated works, just that they are both there. That's the Claiborne evidence. The warrant here is that replacement does not occur if both of them are existing, rather it's an act of synthesis. And three, assays assume replacement is how overall human generated works will interact with AI generated works. Gerstager directly indicts that and says that rather it be one of synthesis. The next argument is the overall link turn. The AF wrecks AI innovation. The plan's overall licensing requirements act as a barrier to entry, increase costs, and deters companies from pursuing AI-driven projects altogether. That's Bro, Lindbergh, John, and Sternberger. Our evidence says the plan is a, quote, existential threat to emerging technologies, as all AI development would abruptly become too expensive and too difficult. Most of the 1AR link defense relies on the assumption the plan is good for the industry, which is unfounded by evidence and simply illogical. They say that large companies would survive, but our Bro evidence says that it's bad for innovation because it reduces competition and results in worse overall productions. Other countries do not thump. Most innovation happens in the US, and our internal link is about the US integrating AI in decision-making, not Europe. Their evidence just says that the EU is considering transparency measures, which is not nearly as threatening as the plan, which makes AI innovation prohibitively expensive. Error negative on the link. We have more than double the evidence they do on this question, and both link cards are from lobbying groups who have a clear financial incentive to advocate for the plan, whereas our evidence is overall from intellectual property examples, which also answers the thumper. Go to court clog. We're not going for it. We will concede that courts aren't the internal link to solving climate change. It means they have no offense on the turn. But we will also concede courts are clogged now. That zeros case solvency. Litigation will be protracted and costly, which favors larger AI firms, especially post-Chevron. It means abuses will still occur as legal precedent is slow to determine. It means they cannot access solvency. At worst, their time frame is extremely slow for determining the actual effect of legal precedent post-plan. And no turn. Their clarification only serves to muddle the waters more regarding who owns certain works and would lead to frivolous lawsuits. That's Hansen and Bro from the Turici, and also more proof why a licensing scheme would not work successfully under legal parameters. Go to journalism advantage. No shot overall disadvantage. 1NC1 fails. There's far too many works in the field to properly understand who owns what and how to then litigate that, which means courts would not be successful in determining how to actually give out licensing agreements. That's the damning evidence from the 1C1. And they dropped that you cannot give them the overall, or you cannot even determine who has licenses per the Hansen and Brook evidence because we have no party to administer who gets what, which means it's an overall legal black hole of how the plan is properly adjudicated that big and large tech firms would properly exploit. 1C2, the far bigger internal link to why AI is harming or why technology is harming old news media is tech consolidation. Groups like Google and Facebook use their overall leverage to force newspapers into unfavorable contracts, which overall hurts them. That's the painter evidence from the 1NC, which means that they cannot resolve overall broader issues for why specifically local newspapers are failing and falling. 1C3, newspapers are generally resilient. The radio example provides precedent for how they'd be able to survive the flaws of what's occurring right now. And 1C5, democracy does not stop war. Civil wars are equally likely. Economic factors and other factors outweigh. That's all the Dornsby evidence. The specific warrant they have of global cooperation. They have not isolated how they're able to actually incur a peaceful utopia in the world of global cooperation and overcome other factors, especially when that cooperation already exists between states like the US and China. Go to modeling. 1C1 was largely handled on the DA, but there's no overall modeling class because overall human-owned or operated works would be able to synthesize with existing AI works. In 1C2, it's the turn. The plan overall is worse for AI models because developers will skirt buying quality technology and run to cheap technology because of newly implemented licensing fees. That was all the Montaigne evidence. And the last thing here, 1C3, the data poisoning wars impact is overall bunk. There's no evidence that laws would be susceptible to malfactions that would escalate to a nuclear conflict, much less something that we should care about.
Yep, the order is advantage 1, advantage 2, the clog DA, the AI industry DA. Anyone not ready? Cool. Democracy is the only chance that humanity has. Russia and China are threatening the fabric of the liberal international order. Hotspots are about to ignite in Ukraine and Taiwan, and they guarantee the use of nuclear weapons. Autocracies will shut down all social and scientific progress by locking us into specific societal trajectories. We won't be able to research existential issues like pandemics and climate change, which will destroy humanity. That turns the DA. Our Belfield evidence explicitly says that an authoritarian world order would halt progress in AI research. Society lock-in ensures that progress stagnates because there is not a diversity of ideas, and autocratic leaders are vulnerable to groupthink. That means we won't get to AGI either. Journalism is the pillar of autocracy abroad, but infinite AI-generated content will corrupt the United States' infosphere. They say licensing fails. 1, incentives. All parties want cash. Copyright holders will come out of the woodwork, so they'll be easily identifiable for the payout. 2, collective management organizations do work. They worked in music, they worked in art, they worked in other literary works. Shutterstock and Getty are empirical examples that prove that it can work at scale, and they were extraordinarily successful in dealing with orphan works as well, which means we can trace back copyrights to their original holders. 3, sure, let's say there are inevitable holdouts. They can license on their own, or AI providers can exclude them from training. Orphan works would get excluded. Now, no tech consolidation thumper. AI is key. Imagine a world where AI-generated works take over the internet and take over the newsphere. That would obliterate democracy. Tech companies only make money and compete with journalists because of the dominance of AI now, and news companies would still survive big tech consolidation because tech companies will not entirely be able to shut them out of the market with social media. It's AI that emulates the news that runs them out of the market. Resilience warrant is wrong. Their evidence is not about journalism, it's just about newspapers, and radio is not the same as the artificial intelligence revolution. Advantage 2. Model collapse will be done on the DA page. We'll concede terminal impact defense. It cuts against the case impact, the DA impact, and the plan is not worse because worse AI LLMs will be run out of the market in the short term. That does not take out our model collapse argument, though, because in the long term, all AI models will get worse as we run out of human-generated content. Flog DA. We explicitly said that there's no link in the 1AR, and the 1AR said we decrease clog because uncertainty plagues copyright law now, but the plan clarifies the record, which makes the affirmative administrable, and durable fiat requires enforcement resources, otherwise the affirmative loses every debate. AI industry DA. Model collapse takes out the DA. Large language models require human-created content. Big tech companies and AI providers use newspapers and human journalism in their datasets to make sure that LLMs are accurate. If we run true human-generated content out of the market, LLMs will be forced to use AI-generated content instead, which will make LLMs spit out nonsense and be totally inaccurate. That takes out the DA. The negative is read a slate of cards that suggests AI innovation is booming. That could be true. Money could be dumped into the AI industry. That does not mean LLMs and AI are improving. LLMs will get worse in the long run because they'll run out of good data. They have read 2 cards suggesting that model class is not a valid threat. Both of these assume that there is some consistent stream of human-generated content. That does not assume the affirmative scenario that basically says all human-generated content will get run out of the marketplace of ideas. Now, framing issue for the turns case and impact level. We agree that AI will replace human decision-making to some extent. A question of whether the app makes AI better or worse. Our argument is that AI has to be trained well on human-generated content, otherwise it'll make flawed decisions. That turns all of their arguments about nuclear conflicts, pandemics, and climate change as well. And human control is sustainable. They have not read a card that says that it is truly existential, and they can use AI as a tool to make human decisions. Democracy also does outweigh because it's a structural impact that controls the trajectory of AI research over the long run. Now, no link to the DA. The plan does not undermine innovation. Deep-pocketed actors are the biggest leaders of innovation. OpenAI, Microsoft, etc. have tons of revenue to pay out licensing fees, and they have more of an incentive to abide by licensing requirements because more human content is better at better training data for AI models. Now, they say it's a barrier to entry. No, it's a cost of business as usual doings in the AI business. It does not become too expensive because AI companies have deep pockets. Smaller companies will survive as well because CMOs will reduce licensing fees for smaller companies, and paying the licensing fee is not that prohibitive. They've also dropped that the EU is going to be ushering in new AI regulations as well, which comes to DA 2.
Yay.
Cool. Great debate, everybody. Thanks so much to Veronica, Akash, Grace, and Chris for this wonderful debate about the intersection of copyright and artificial intelligence. If you've made it this far in this debate, you're doing a great job. Before you exit the video, remember to write an RFD, or a reason for decision, describing why you thought each team won and why. We hope that this debate has given you a feel for what a policy debate looks like, and each one of us is very excited to see you get your start in an activity that we all love. Good luck at your first tournament.